Hello, this is Lindsay, and welcome back to our monthly Facebook Live series at Bone and Joint Institute with our physicians. Today we have Dr. Ron Derr with us, one of our foot and ankle and sports medicine physicians here at Bone and Joint. So welcome, Dr. Derr.
Yep, nice to be here.
And so today we're going to be talking about stress fractures. So we know that a lot of you have run the Music City Marathon or the half marathon over the weekend, and very congratulations to you. But sometimes there might be some nagging aches and pains along the way. So we just want to talk about stress fractures, especially stress fractures in the foot today as part of our series. But before we get started with that, Dr. Derr, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been here with this group for 27 years, so one of the part of the old guard here. I've seen a lot of changes over the years, but it's been a great practice to be with. In addition to helping with all the patient care here, I also take care of the sports teams at Ravenwood High School and cover their sports programs. All of us here kind of take on one of the schools in the county, and that's been mine. And it's been a great experience there. But and so we see a lot of athletic injuries, but we see a lot of weekend athletes as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's move on to stress fractures. Just like I said, because it's so timely with the marathon happening last week. So who can get a stress fracture, and what is a stress fracture?
So a stress fracture obviously can be obtained by anybody who's active. Basically, it's a overuse injury of typically of a bone where the healing processes aren't keeping up with the breakdown. Bones are always remodeling and healing, and so when we put them through a stressful activity such as running, jumping, court sports, anything that really puts a demand on your foot, there's always a remodeling process that's in action. Sometimes the healing is not keeping up with the breakdown or the destruction, and so over time that can weaken a bone to a point where it either becomes injured or fractured from that activity.
Okay, and you've described it before as like a paper clip. Is that correct?
Yeah, I tell people if you took a paper clip and bend it back and forth long enough, it's going to gradually kind of weaken and break. That's kind of basically the same idea with a bone. Bone that has some elasticity to it. It can take on a fair amount of stress and accommodate that. But when it gets to a point where that happens too often and too long, and it's not had a chance to recover and rest, then there's going to be an injury.
An injury there. So how do you diagnose a stress fracture? If someone comes in to your office, what do you look for? What do you ask?
Probably the most common reason we look for a stress fracture is suspicion based on complaints of pain, swelling. But most often it's I tell people it's a diagnosis of suspicion. And with the activities that people do, especially the half marathon recently, all that training and that extensive amount of activity that goes with that, the training that leads up to it and the actual event, it just puts you at a higher risk of those sorts of injuries coming on.
And what are typical treatments for a stress fracture?
Well, we'd like to catch it early, so if there's pain or suspicion of an injury, we'd rather have people come in and get evaluated sooner than later. Because if you can catch it early enough, a lot of times it's just obviously easier to heal and recover from if you can catch it before it becomes an actual fracture. An injury can be there. We may not see anything on an X-ray, but we know from the activity and from the description of the symptoms and the findings that we see on exam that's probably the most likely scenario, that we can rest it with we call it active rest, where you don't have to really be immobilized so much, but we just have to avoid the activity that's causing the injury for a while. If we actually see a fracture, it's going to be in a more extensive sort of recovery, where you're actually in a boot or a cast or limited weight bearing or more aggressively for 6-8 weeks.
Wow. Is surgery ever an option for a stress fracture?
Very seldom does surgery become an option, but certain bones in the foot have a higher risk of non-union or not going on to heal. Some bones, such as a navicular bone, sometimes a fifth metatarsal fracture in an athlete, we're more aggressive with and may require some operative fixation to stabilize it, to minimize the risk of that becoming a worse injury by not healing. But in general, stress fractures are bones that or injuries that heal without surgery.
Okay, well that's a great thing.
Yeah.
So what are your tips, especially as people train for different activities or just in general? What are some good prevention tips for stress fractures?
I think the biggest point I would encourage people to do is go slow as far as how you jump into an activity. It's not so much the activity, sometimes it's the training errors that we see where people go way too aggressively into an activity and don't acclimate to it, either because of the length of time that they're doing it or the intensity that they're participating in. Sometimes it's a terrain issue, if you're doing a lot of hills instead of flat work, or if you're running on asphalt instead of a path or a all-weather track that has a little bit of give to it and allows you to have a little bit more cushion in your foot. Sometimes those training errors can be the biggest reason that these injuries come on.
Okay, well that's some great information, Dr. Derr, so thank you for that about stress fractures. One thing we do throughout this whole series is kind of just take a step back, and I want you to talk about the comprehensive care that Bone and Joint offers. I mean, we have everything under one roof. We have multiple locations throughout the county to help patients, but can you kind of give a little synopsis of that in your own words?
Yeah, the benefit we have here, and it's been a great practice. We've developed a great facility here and outreach program with our outreach clinics. But, we have the advantage here of almost 15, 16 doctors here working together. So if we have any issues that are outside of our comfort zone, we all have the ability to communicate with each other, share and discuss cases. We also have the benefit in a facility such as this to have physical therapy, which is available to us here or at our outreach clinics. We have imaging in the building now with MRIs and CAT scans. We often become tests that we use to help with diagnosis as far as defining what we're treating. And then we have the surgery center built into this facility as well. So if it ever did become an issue where surgery was indicated or necessary, we can do all that right here in this one facility. And so it's really been, quite extensive what we can do here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Derr, again, thank you for your time today. And that wraps up our monthly series of Facebook Lives with our physicians. But if you have any questions or want to schedule an appointment with Dr. Derr, you can reach us either via our website at www.boneandjointtn.org or via our phone at 615-791-2630. Dr. Derr, thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thanks for
having me. We'll see you next month.
Okay.